Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and I'm here to give you some recommendations for the Rent Readathon. If you missed my announcement, I'll link it down below and up in the cards, but the Rent Readathon is taking place all throughout February, and between myself and Beck from Mooney Reads by Starlight, we've come up with prompts for all of the main characters of the show as well as the creator of the show. You can do with these prompts what you want. You can try to tick off all the prompts in a certain character or characters. You can do one from each. You do you. This is just a fun jumping off point for choosing books. That means there are 24 prompts in total, and when I thought about sitting down and coming up with multiple books for each of the prompts, I just kept putting that off. I procrastinated, I haven't come up with anything, and this video has to go up soon. So instead we're going to go through the prompts and I'm going to give you kind of the top of my head recommendations. Which means I might not have a recommendation for every single prompt off the top of my head, but we'll see how well I do. First prompt from Mark is read a book that has to do with film. Tell Me How You Really Feel or Night Film both fit this prompt. The next prompt is a biography or a memoir. For that I'd like to recommend Radium Girls, which are about the girls that worked in the watch dial factories painting the little radium numbers and the health complications they got from that. In a similar vein, I'd also like to recommend The Five, which is about the 5 women that were supposedly murdered by Jack the Ripper. This is not about him, it is all about them. The third prompt is to read a book with a Jewish protagonist. For that, I'd love to recommend The Intimacy Experiment. Our two main characters in this book are a sex worker who now has a website that teaches people about sex and sexuality, and a rabbi. It's steamy and wonderful and I loved it. On to our next character, who is Roger. The first prompt is a book about music, and for that one, how about Daisy Jones and the Six? Because I know that some people didn't like this. I really enjoyed it, especially as an audiobook. The next prompt is a contemporary, which should be easy enough to do, but I'll recommend a couple anyway. The first one being Loveless by Alice Oseman, actually anything by Alice Oseman. This one in particular has to do with this girl who's going away to university for the first time and maybe realizing that she's ace. Another recommendation I'd like to make is Bloom. This is a graphic novel. It's absolutely beautiful. It's about this guy who works in his parents' bakery and is trying to train to find a replacement for him so he can go away and basically continue his music career. But you know, maybe he starts falling in love with his replacement. All this running around made me kind of warm, which makes me very happy that I have this book fan. Isn't it great? The last prompt is a book that deals with addiction, and for this I'd like to recommend Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. I listened to this one as an audiobook, which is excellent because they read it themselves, and it's a memoir of their life, so it has to do with addiction but also the rest of his life as well. Moving on to Maureen, we want a book with bisexual rep. This one is near and dear to my heart, so I'll just recommend a few. First we have The Queen of Illiflaria, secondly we have Queens of Geek, and then thirdly The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Next we want something weird, and for this I'll just blanket recommend all of the Welcome to Night Vale books, so either Welcome to Night Vale, It Devours, The Faceless Old Woman Who Secretly Lives in Your Home, or any of the bind-ups of the episodes. I'm missing the 3rd and 4th bind-up, and that's a problem. Next is to read a book of poetry or about a performing artist. For that, how about anything by Sappho or I Love You, Call Me Back. For Joanne, the first prompt is to read a book centering law. For that, I want you to read Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, or American Kingpin by Nick Bolton, which is all about this guy who created a website to sell drugs on the internet. The next prompt is to read a non-fiction book. That could be a whole host of things, but for now I'm just going to recommend 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. Joanne's final prompt is to read a book with lesbian rep, and I'm going to recommend Pulp by Robin Talley, which is all about lesbian pulp novels. The first prompt for Angel is to read a book with anti-capitalist themes. For that I'm going to recommend Pride by E.B. Zaboy. The next prompt is to read a romance or a book that centers a different type of love. For that I'm going to go with Red, White, and Royal Blue for an actual romance, or again you can read Loveless and you would check off a couple of different prompts with it because obviously this is about platonic love. The last prompt is to read a book with trans rep, and I will always recommend Cemetery Boys. This book is lovely. Look how much I tabbed it. I'm not a tabber. For Collins, the first prompt is to read a book about a teacher or a book that teaches you something. I'm just going to go with The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. I learned a lot from this book, just from him reviewing things. The next prompt is to read a science fiction book. How about A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet or An Absolutely Remarkable Thing? There are more on my shelves, but this is taking a really long time as it is. Collins' last prompt is to read a book with a queer person of color. Again, Cemetery Boys fits for this one. We could also go with The Black Veins, and we could also go with You Should See Me in a Crown. For Mimi, the first prompt is to read a book about HIV or AIDS. I would love to recommend to you Where We Go From Here. This was the group read for the Queer Lit Readathon, the last round, and it was phenomenal. It takes place in Brazil and it's about these 3 characters, some of whom are HIV positive and some of whom aren't. The second prompt is to read a graphic novel, and the fun thing about this is there are so many types of graphic novels. So you could be a nerd like me and read any of the Dark Tower graphic novel adaptations that happened. There was even a Dr. Horrible adaptation. Jay and Silent Bob have their own graphic novels. And then of course anything from The Devil's Panties is always a good time. Mimi's last prompt is to read a book with a fiery character. For that I want to recommend The Witch King. I don't have a physical copy of this one. This is just so much fun. It is about this person who is betrothed to the king of the fairies and then decides to run away, transitions, and then is brought back to the kingdom later as a teenager. This protagonist is unapologetic and I love him. For Jonathan Larson, the first prompt is a book set in New York. For that you could also go with An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure The Other Black Girl takes place in New York as well because it has to do with publishing. New York and publishing are hand in hand in my head. The second prompt is a book set in the future, and if you want to combine the first prompt and the second prompt for Jonathan Larson, you have New York 2140. This is about New York, but it's set in the future when New York has flooded and people have to use boats and stuff to get around. And the last prompt is to read a dystopian. You could read 1984, which is what Suburbia was based on. I, however, would love to recommend Crosshairs by Catherine Hernandez. This one takes place mostly in and around Toronto, and it's about a time in the not too distant future where any form of marginalization has been outlawed, and specifically a group of queer people of color are underground and trying to plan a revolution because the rest of the world doesn't know how terrible Canada's being. And there you have it. I had at least one recommendation for every prompt, if not more. What would you recommend for these prompts? Let me know down in the comments below because I'm sure that some people haven't figured out their TBRs yet. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!